Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of JT Talks Jobs. This is the show that teaches you everything school didn't teach you about job search and career development. And I'm excited today to be talking about informational interviews. It's interesting. We had a lot of requests for this topic. I wasn't aware that this wasn't something mainstream that people knew about. This is actually a tactic we've been teaching for years to our Work It Daily members. It's literally part of our job search plan strategy that we teach them. And so I'm going to walk you through today the steps that you should take to execute and be very successful at informational interviews, help you understand their power, because there's something that you can be doing right now, especially in times of crisis. There's an opportunity to really connect with people. People are more open to connecting because they understand how important their network is. We always tell you here, your network is your net worth. And now more than ever, that is true. In the future, there will be something called the hidden job market. And the hidden job market is when companies don't publicly post jobs anywhere because they don't want to be overwhelmed with job applicants. So instead, they post them quietly on their websites and they tell their coworkers. And their coworkers, they say to the coworkers, "Do you know anybody?" And that's where the network comes into play. So these informational interviews are a wonderful way to build and expand your network so that you can tap into the hidden job market. Okay. But before I get started on that, just a couple of reminders. We've got a ton of free resources for you, as always, at Work It Daily. In addition to streaming with you live here on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, we also have an unbelievable list of PDFs and video tutorials and things that you can download for free over on our site. So be sure to click on it. Today in particular, we want to let you know about the 18 interview questions you need to be prepared to answer in your next interview. People are telling us that this free PDF is like stealing the opponent's playbook. So I hope you go over there and check it out. The other thing I want to tell you is that we just kicked off a new live training inside Work It Daily on how to get a job when you've been fired or let go. And this is obviously a very popular topic right now. So if you are in that position and you are looking for a way to be held accountable and work with a bunch of like-minded people in a private setting and get the career coaching you need, then go over to Work It Daily. All you need is an active subscription. Sign up with us and you will have immediate access to this amazing live training that will be going on for the next 3 weeks exclusively inside our program. So again, it's how to get a job when you've been laid off or fired. Very, very timely topic and a wonderful opportunity for you to join up, be accountable, and get some momentum going in your job search. Okay, enough with the public service announcements. We are going to get down to the business of talking about informational interviews. And so the first thing I want to talk about is, how is this different than a regular job interview? So a job interview is very defined. There's a job posting, you applied for the job, the recruiter screened you for the position, and you're being brought in for, in person, or these days a Zoom or video-based interview with the hiring manager. The hiring manager is going to be doing all the questions. They're going to be asking you all sorts of things about your experience. They're going to ask you a lot of behavioral questions, those open-ended questions. Tell me about a time when you had to do this, and how would you handle this situation? In order to get inside your head, see your personality, see your aptitude, and of course, quantify your experience. So in that case, they're in charge and they're assessing you, and you really need to be ready to answer all their questions. Now, of course, at the end, there's usually a chance for you to ask questions. And if you're not familiar with what questions to ask, go back and watch our previous episodes. Last Tuesday and Thursday, we did what questions to be prepared to answer post-crisis, as well as what questions to ask post-crisis, to videos that you can find on our archives. But that's really the big difference between a job interview and an informational interview. In the job interview, the hiring manager is sitting in the driver's seat. They're asking all the questions. They're controlling it. In the informational interview, you're sitting in the driver's seat. You're the one asking all the questions. You're the one that's setting the agenda. And it's such a huge opportunity for you to make a strong impression and build, have a meaningful conversation and build a lasting relationship with somebody. So it's exciting, right? Because you have control, but it can still feel a little nerve-wracking and scary, especially if you don't know how to conduct one properly. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, what I want you to think about when you're collecting a list of people that you want to informational interview, there's really 3 types of people that you're looking for. You're looking for highly successful professionals in your geography, meaning in your local area, the local commutable area where you would want to work. You're looking for people that are very successful in your industry. So they may not be in your current location or anywhere near you, but they're very successful and have the type of job that you would like in the industry that you're in. And then there's the skill set. Maybe they have a particular set of skills or experience, a specialty or a niche. It's not necessarily industry related, but it is necessary to be successful in your chosen field. This is how you want to narrow it down and look for people to informational interview, because obviously you're going to gather some pretty important information. And all three of these would be the kind of people you would want to network with when actively seeking employment. So there's a method to this. You don't just informational interview any old person. You have to find somebody who meets at least one of these. And obviously, if you hit the trifecta, you find somebody locally who's in your industry and your skill set. Wow, now that's somebody you really need to know, right? That's the key. And an informational interview with that person could really open some doors. So again, you're always looking for people to target that have at least one of these, ideally, 2 or 3 if possible. But if they don't meet any of these criteria, it's not that you shouldn't meet with them. I'm not saying you shouldn't do an informational interview. I'm just saying from a strategic networking standpoint, it's probably not going to be as strong. All right. So I'm going to give you 4 steps today. And step 1 is the whole outreach and the ask. So that's the first thing you have to do. You're the one that wants the informational interview. You have to go out and reach out to somebody. Now, traditionally these days, most people are doing this through email or LinkedIn. And, in a best case scenario, you know somebody who knows somebody. So I would say go find this person on LinkedIn and see if you have any second line connections, meaning you and somebody else, somebody you're first line connected to, knows this person and might be able to make an introduction. The chances that somebody will agree to an informational interview will statistically rise if you were introduced to them by a colleague of some sorts. So you do always want to try to get this through referral, informational interviews. But if you can't, if there's nobody in your wheelhouse that is connected to the person, then what you're going to do is send a connection request on LinkedIn. I wouldn't suggest sending an email, mostly because they don't get answered. I would send a connection request and say, dear so-and-so, your profile came up when I was researching top people in our industry or in our skill set or in our location. Can we connect? You keep it really simple. Hopefully you've optimized your LinkedIn profile. If not, I would definitely do that. Please don't reach out for informational interviews if your LinkedIn profile isn't properly optimized, because every single person you reach out to on LinkedIn is going to check you out first and then make their decision. But once you've done that and you've reached out and they've said, yeah, I'll connect with you, then you are going to send them an email through LinkedIn, which doesn't cost you anything, right? Once somebody's a connection, you can email them. And here are the things that you're going to want to cover. In this email, you're going to want to tell them very specifically what you admire about their career history. So what is it that caught your attention? Number 2, you're going to tell them that you would like to conduct an informational interview, but more importantly, explain how you believe talking to them will give you more insight into your industry or career path. Then you are going to stress to them that you are not asking them to help you get a job. In no way. You're not looking for a referral. You're not looking for them to help you get a job. Please stress that. You are also going to promise not to take up too much of their time. You're going to tell them it's a 20-minute informational interview. Any more than that, and people feel like that's a real time commitment. And lastly, you're going to say that you will work around their schedule. You'll work around their agenda, okay? These are very important things that you want to have included in there so that if this person's getting this from the first time, they're saying, oh, okay, this person really likes my background in this, and they're looking to speak to me about the industry. They don't want a job, and they only want 20 minutes of my time, and they're willing to work with my schedule. Okay, I can do that. See? And imagine when you reach out, if you were referred by somebody, imagine how much even more powerful that would be if you started with, Mary Jones referred me, and here's why I, love your background, et cetera, et cetera. So that's really important. Whenever you can, get referred. But if you can't, it's even more important that you follow this 5-step process to make sure that all the important information is in there so that they will, in fact, accept. Now, keep in mind, folks, right now it's about 1 out of 5 people will accept your request. 1 out of 5. So don't get upset if people pass or don't respond to you. It doesn't mean they hate you. Most of the time, they won't even remember. It might not have even gotten to you. They might not even be checking LinkedIn that often. Don't take it to heart. Understand that this is a numbers game. So you have to do a well-crafted intro, but you're going to have to reach out to a bunch of people in order to get those informational interviews set. But as you'll see a little bit later, all it takes is 1. Once you get 1 informational interview in the queue, I'm going to show you a great technique for you to always get your next one and your next one and your next one. Okay? All right. So let's talk about step 2, which is you preparing questions. Remember, you're in charge here. You're running this informational interview. And my piece of advice there is to think like you are a journalist writing a story. So imagine you were asked to write a story about this person's experience in their career, in their industry, whatever, and you really wanted to get the full sense of the picture. So what questions would you want to ask in order to be able to write that story? And that's what we're going to talk about. I have 7 questions for you today that you should ask in informational interviews. And as you'll see, if you follow them in order, it kind of sets you up for success. So question number 1 is, how did you get into this line of work? I always love people asking people their becoming stories. How did you become this? Tell me about how you became this. It's very fascinating to hear people's career stories. Just to sit back and listen to the twists and turns. It's very validating. We all realize that so much of it in some ways is a bit random how it all connects. But people love telling their story. It gives them a chance for themselves to connect the dots and think back about their success and create this really positive vibe. So you always want to kick it off with this one. The second question is, why do you like what you do? So obviously you became this. This is how you got where you are. What do you like about it? Once again, you're reinforcing with a really positive question, helping them to talk about what they enjoy about their work. That's a good thing. That's going to slip you into the third question, which is, how does your current employer help you succeed? Now, this is where it starts to get interesting, folks, because if you are targeting people that work at companies that you're interested in working at, this is a beautiful segue, because you want to understand how this employer of theirs is helping them achieve their career goals and be successful in their work, making that connection. So you're going to learn what it is about this company that is special or unique from an employment standpoint, which is going to help you prepare should you ever want to work at that company yourself, right? Also, again, it lets them say really nice things about their employer, which is a good positive vibe. The fourth question is, where do you want to take your career in the next 2 years? So now you want to ask them as they're thinking forward. Notice I said 2 years, none of this 5-year stuff. People's careers are changing every year, probably every month at this point. So 2 years, I think, is a healthy, ways out. You can say, where do you want to take your career in the next 2 years? Where do you see yourself going? Because if they're as successful as they appear to be, and obviously you chose them because you're successful, I guarantee you they have a game plan. All the best people do. They know where they're going next in their career. They're happy where they are today, but they're already thinking about where they want to be tomorrow. And that leads us to question 5. How will your current employer help you achieve your goals? So again, we're going back to learn more about this employer. We want to hear about how the growth will happen in this employer. How smart is that? You're indirectly learning about the growth trajectories in this company and how somebody actually climbs the ranks in the organization. So all these questions, while they're completely focused on the individual, are also giving you massive insights into what it's like to work for the company and what are the advantages, so that you can figure that out when it comes time to apply. Then we move into number 6. What advice would you give someone looking to get hired by the company like the one you work for? So now, again, you're not saying, I'm not looking for you to help me get hired, but given your experience, given your success, given the fact that you know how to partner with your employer, what do you think a company like that looks for? What do you think they looked for in you? What do you look for when you're hiring other people? What does it take to get employed by a top company like this and to work along top talent like yourself? That's what you're implying there through that question. So now you're giving them a chance to tell you and advise you. This is incredible information for when you're putting together the cover letter, when you apply to the job, if you land an interview. Knowing this kind of information can help you craft what you say so that you stand out and that you really connect with them. And here comes that number 7 special question that's going to save you once you get one informational interview. At the end of this interview, you say, is there someone you admire in the company that you might be willing to introduce me to for another informational interview about success? So who is it that you admire in this organization that you think might give me some added perspective about what it's like to work here? Now, notice I said one person that you admire. So why you do this is you make it very easy for that person to think of somebody that they admire and recommend and help you in a matter of seconds. One of the biggest mistakes people make is they say something like, can you think of anyone in our industry that might be a good person for me to talk to? That's actually harder to think of because now they're thinking about all sorts of different people. Whereas if you dial it in and say, who do you admire at your current company that you think I could really gain some perspective from? Now you've narrowed the search process for them, making it easier, and you've only asked for one referral. So you're not asking for a lot. Once you do this, imagine doing it every single time. I have taught so many people how to do this over the years, and it is one of the easiest ways to get multiple informational interviews at an organization so that multiple people in the company know about you. And the reason that's important is that when the time comes, when this company has a job available posted, you can not only apply and take all the information you gathered through these informational interviews, but now you can individually email each and every one of the people you met and said, I want to thank you. You and I did an informational interview together. I just saw a job posting. I just applied and I felt really confident in my application because of all the wonderful insights you shared. And imagine notifying all those people. I guarantee you a bunch of them are going to go to the hiring manager and say, I met that person. He or she is, really good, really smart. You should check them out. Well, what happens when several people do that to a hiring manager? They're going to pull your application from the pile. And I am not making this up. I have told this story to you all before, and I will tell you again because it's one of my favorites. I had a young woman, super talented, in college, going to school for basically a bachelor's of arts degree in sociology. Nothing, special, nothing related to sports marketing. Let me just be clear on that. But while she was there as a junior, she realized that she dreamed to work at ESPN, which was right in her backyard near her school. She wanted to work at ESPN. Everybody that applies to ESPN usually has a sports marketing background. That's what people go for. And she knew that. So we set up this informational interview strategy. And over the course of her senior year, she met with a whole bunch of different managers there. Each time she got her foot in the door with one, she'd say, what's one person that really impresses you here that you think I could learn from? And she went around, she ended up meeting with 5 different managers in ESPN. So school graduation comes, they're doing all sorts of internships. She doesn't get picked. She graduates from school. She goes home, and out of the blue, she gets a call from a manager at ESPN. And the manager says, I just had somebody back out of my internship program for the summer. I sent out a desperate email asking if any of the managers knew somebody. And 3 different people said they interviewed you and thought you'd be great, that you just graduated and that you would be great for the job. So I'd like to interview you right now. And if it's a fit, I'm literally going to offer you a job. And that's what happened. And that's how she got to work to ESPN, all through informational interviewing. Because in that desperate moment, folks, recruiters and hiring managers in particular don't have time to come up with a job posting, post the job, look at a whole bunch of resumes, do a whole bunch of interviews. In that crunch moment, you're just going to the people you trust the most in the organization, and you're saying, who do you know? Who have you talked to? Who would be good for this role? And you get the referrals. That is why so many jobs are gotten via referral. So this little thing right here, this question number 7, is a non-skippable question. You want to ask this every time so that you can get your next informational interview and your next one inside the organization. All right, moving on to step number 3, the actual execution. So this is really just how you're going to go through this properly. I just have a list of 5 things that I want you to remember. First of all, always thank them for their time. Right out of the gate, thank them for their time. Secondly, reiterate your desire to keep it to 20 minutes. I want you to look at your clock. Even if you have to set a timer that doesn't, beep at you, but you can see the timer knocking down, you do not disrespect. Even if they sound like they're saying, no, I'm happy to talk more. You can maybe go 5 minutes over, but that is it. The sign of a truly respectful person is sticking to the time no matter what. Even if they're saying, no, it's okay, I'll go. Literally, you say, nope, I don't want to take up any more of your time. I promise 20 minutes, and that's what we're going to do. Then I want you to ask your questions and I want you to listen. This is about them doing all the talking, not you. It's really important that you pull back and just take notes and listen carefully so that you can pull that all together, okay? Stop at 20 minutes, like I said, no exceptions. You don't want to go on and on. I've had people say to me, oh, they were willing to meet with me for an hour. Well, the problem with that is that you've now taken up all their time. The next time around, you want to ask for a few minutes of their time. In their time, they're thinking, well, I already gave this person an hour. But if you're really good about sticking to the 20 minutes and keeping it short, that's the impression they're going to have about you, that you'll never abuse their time, that you'll never take them off topic, that you'll never talk too much. So they're going to be more willing to give you their time again in the future. And then lastly, you always want to follow up with a thank you email, obviously. But on top of that, you should add a little something to that email. I want you to go out and research an article or a video or a resource. In the time that they were talking, you're going to learn a lot. And the way you're going to prove that you learned a lot is you're going to go find something that you think they would find really interesting. And that's how you're going to give back. You're going to say, thank you so much for your time. It was so amazing to hear your story. When you were talking about this, it made me think about this. Enclosed is a video that I thought you would find helpful. Okay. This is how you can give back to these individuals, by going and finding interesting content that you know would just continue to help them go further in their career. Okay. That's what you want to do in that case. All right. And then step 4 is about staying in touch. And this is the part where I see a lot of people fall down. They don't know how much they should stay in touch, how much is too much, how much is not enough. I have a real simple rule of thumb here with informational interviews. Set a calendar reminder 1 month from the date that you met with them, 6 times. For 6 months, you're going to do a check-in once a month. And all you're going to do each of those times is find an article or a video and send it to them and say, hey, hope you're doing well. Saw this, thought of you. Here you go. That's all you're going to do. Now, what I want you to monitor over those 6 months and those 6 times that you do that is, does the person respond? Do they give you any feedback? Because if they do respond back and say, thank you, this was so helpful, or wow, this is so insightful, I didn't see this. If you get little dialogues back, then you know that this is an active person that feels very connected. If they don't respond to you at all, then it's just sort of a dead network. And after 6 months, you don't need to keep doing it. But the reason I want you to do this consistently for 6 months is because it's how you plant the seed in the mind of this individual as to what type of professional you are, right? It's just that coming through and staying connected mentality. And again, it's a way for you to give back on an ongoing basis and show, I'm not going to ask any more from you. When you gave me that interview, that was a big chunk of your time. This is how I'm giving back to you. I'm sharing these things that you might find interesting. Okay. And it's a really wonderful way to stay on their radar screen without asking any more for them. All right. Now I want to give you a couple of tips to keep in mind in a bonus. Tip number 1, send updates on any developments. So if you informational interview with someone, and then all of a sudden you get the chance to submit an application at their company, you want to notify them. You want to let them know, hey, I just want you to know that I just applied to the XYZ company. I'm really excited about it. I don't think I would have applied if I didn't love what I heard when you talked about what it was like to work there, right? It's always good just to give them a heads up. You're not asking for anything, but giving them a heads up is very important in that process. That in mind, if you're going to want to include the fact that you've ever spoken to them, which is a good idea, you always need to ask permission first. So one of the things that we teach at Work It Daily is something called a disruptive cover letter. This is a cover letter where you don't talk about anything in your resume. It's a total no-no. If you put anything on your cover letter that's in your resume, nobody reads it because they just go to the resume. It's a cover letter that tells a story about why you feel connected to the company. But if you can open up that disruptive cover letter with, I had the pleasure to speak to Ann Jones several months ago and learned a lot about your company. Well, anytime you name drop an existing employee, that's bonus points. And that's a great place to do it in the cover letter, but you can't do it without permission. So it's also important that if you want to use their name, you seek permission. Now, the last thing I want to give you is a bonus. I told you that when you conduct this informational interview, you're kind of like a journalist. Here is a technique that I've seen work extremely, extremely well for people who are willing to put in the time. You have the ability to write an article or a post, if you don't want an actual article, to showcase their expertise. So let's say they taught you something really insightful or showed you a resource or something happens. It always does in these informational interviews. Why not put together a short post in LinkedIn and say, shout out to such and such, and link to them and say, I learned so much from her or him today, especially the idea of this, this, and this. So what a wonderful way to give them public praise by doing that. You can also write an actual article. Remember I said, go find the best people in the industry. Well, if you go informational interview 5 people in a particular industry, you could ask them one question about, where do you see the industry going in the next 90 days? How do you think the industry is going to change as a result of the crisis, right? You can pick any question to add to the list of questions I gave you, and you could ask all 5 people, get their quotes, and then write an article about it. 5 experts in the XYZ industry share what they think is going to happen to the, in the next 90 days. And then you just simply write it all up, write something nice that each one said, talk about why they're an expert in their field, link to their LinkedIn profile, and then be sure to send it to them in advance and say, are you okay? This is what I wrote about you. Are you okay with it? You always want them to sign off. But now you publish on LinkedIn because anybody can, and share it with them and say, I cited you in this article. You know what they're going to do? They're going to share it. They're going to share that article on their feed. They're going to like and comment on it. They're going to share it internally in their organization, show it to their boss. Hey, someone wrote and I got quoted. This is how you build your credibility within those organizations with those people, by giving back. And this is a powerful, powerful way to do it. So not everybody will take me up on this technique, but I will tell you the ones that do, they build incredible relationships. People love being quoted in things, and that's how you get to know them. Especially if you're in a niche field or a niche industry, or you're in a rural location, giving people some exposure for their expertise is very, very important, and a wonderful way, again, to have meaningful conversations, a good reason to do an informational interview, and an even better reason to stay in touch. Okay? Awesome. So there you have it. Informational interviews, the secret to expanding your network in a meaningful and powerful way. I'm going to be taking some questions here from all of you. The team is pulling those together. While I'm doing that, just a couple of quick reminders. We have a lot of free resources over at Work It Daily, one of them being our 18 common interview questions. I know the team is giving you the link here that you can download for free. And don't forget that our 3-week live training starts today on how to get hired after being let go, whether you've been fired, laid off, furloughed. If you're wondering how to get hired after something like that, this 3-week live training is happening exclusively inside the Work It Daily platform. All you have to do is have an active membership. Heck, you can join us for a month and quit at any time, folks. We are the most affordable job search coaching and career coaching you will find anywhere. We also happen to be the only one that is fully social distancing compliant. So go check it out. I guarantee you, best money you'll ever spend. I will say that right now. Best money you will ever spend on your career, guaranteed. Not joking. All right, let's get down to some questions, though. My favorite part of these sessions. First question is from Craig. Craig says, is having an interview with a company's recruiter considered a formal or informational interview, or neither? It depends. If you asked for the interview, if you said to the recruiter, I want to learn more about the company, then that's just an informational interview. If the recruiter reached out to you and said, I want to learn more about you, then that is an actual interview. So it all depends on who asks for the interview, who sets the interview up, right? If they're doing all the questions, then it's a job interview. If you're asking all the questions, it's an informational interview. Renata says, when asking those 7 questions, are we asking a person in a hiring position or someone in a lateral position? It just depends on who you set the informational interview with, Renata. I would argue that you're going to do it with both. Whoever you can get within the organization or in that skill set to meet with you. Again, you're not asking for a job. You're asking to learn about how they got as successful as they are. So it could be a hiring manager if they agree to chat with you. It could be a peer, somebody that's at the peer level. It depends. You should do a lot more of these. You really should. I tell people inside Work It Daily to play informational interview bingo. And that is to take 5 companies that they most dream of working at and get 5 people to do an informational interview from each company, right? So you'd have 5 across, 5 down. And I guarantee you that if you do that, you will build such a network that you will eventually have the chance to interview formally with one of those companies. That's what happens. It takes work, but once you get these informational interviews in flow, it's unbelievable the doors that it opens for you. Jennifer says, I love the keep in touch instructions. Thank you. I never knew how to maintain my professional relationships. Let me ask, what if you are the only one reaching out? I feel like I constantly reach out and get a few responses. Oh, don't get hung up on that, Jennifer. Not at all. You want to reach out and you want to give value. So share a URL to an article, to a video. One of the things we need to know about our network is it's there for us to serve. Don't worry about if no one responds. It doesn't matter. Just keep doing what you're doing. And I guarantee you they're reading it. They're remembering it. And all it takes is one time for them to go, oh yeah, Jennifer always sends me those really neat articles. And I think she does digital marketing. I should reach out to her. See how that works? Just keep giving. Don't get hung up on whether or not people are watching it, are responding to it. Trust me, they're taking it in, but they won't have any message from you and they won't build any sense of what you are about if you aren't doing this consistently. So just keep going. Jocelyn says, I continue to struggle with landing promising positions after meeting 2 VPs, 2 lunches, and what seemed very promising. Any suggestions? It's been 6 months or months since our meeting. So, okay, Jocelyn, right now, you can't, first of all, don't blame yourself. This is unprecedented times. Companies are not hiring. They don't know what to do right now. So the fact that you had these promising meetings, these good conversations is great. I think you need to follow the instructions that I gave here today. 1, send value. Don't ask for anything. Don't even worry about the jobs. Just keep sending value. So sending an article or a video. Two, if these are VP level people, then they would do well by being interviewed for an article. So you are a wonderful candidate to go and say, I'm going to write an article on this and I'm pulling quotes together from 5 people. I'd love to get a quote from you, right? And then get it posted. That's another technique. Create value, serve your network, help them get exposure, help them get better educated, help them get access to resources that they might not have seen yet. Keep doing that. Keep serving your network. And trust me, your network will turn around and serve you. Sylvia says, if you were interviewing someone who's a freelance, do these questions still apply? It does. Just frame it around the fact that they're a freelancer. You know, what do they love about their freelancer role? And what do they love about the companies that hire them? What do they all have in common? Yeah, it's not really any different. Truth be told, even if you're a full-time employee, every job is temporary. So it doesn't matter anyways. It's really no difference. You might want to ask them a little bit about what do they like about freelancing as opposed to being a full-time employee. You might get some very interesting info there. James says, how do you know what industry is a good fit? I worked in customer service for years, but I completed my MBA last year and I'm trying to figure out where to go from here. Well, James, you know, most people, in order to find a job, a career, an industry that suits them, do a lot of self-assessment. I don't know how much self-assessment was offered in your MBA program, but it's important to know your personality, your personas. We have 2 quizzes that people take for free over on Work It Daily. One is your personality and the other is your workplace persona, which is how you like to create value. That's a pretty important one. When I work with people who went to college for one thing and then they get in the job, they hate it. It's because no one ever took the time to show them what the day in the life of that job would really be like and whether or not it spoke to how they like to create value. So you need to research and do a lot more around that and get a lot more help with your professional strengths to narrow that in. It's so hard these days, folks, because choosing a career path, choosing an industry, it's like going to an ice cream parlor that has 360 something flavors. It takes so much longer to decide, and you're always second guessing whether or not you chose the right thing. Whereas if we walk up and it's chocolate or vanilla soft serve, boom, 3 options, chocolate, vanilla, or a swirl. Pretty easy. And you have no regrets because the options were limited. That's the problem with choosing career paths these days. Everyone is constantly second guessing themselves. But if you can put some blinders on by knowing what your strengths and preferences are, that's how you can make sure that you're at least narrowing down the search options. Scott says, when you're an interview finalist and you are told by hiring manager that there's a very strong internal candidate that was being groomed as an apprentice for this position that he will be considering strongly, your thoughts on best response and interview prep? Thank you. Yes. So first of all, you've made it to the finals. It's hard to know whether the company is just doing that in order to cover their bases or if they have some concerns about this person being able to do the role. More likely than not, and I hate to say this, a company will go with the internal candidate. And it's because they're proven, it's easier. You know, they leave the job on a Friday night, they start the new job on a Monday. There's not a lot of internal paperwork, not a lot of onboarding training. They know the lay of the land. It's why companies should groom and develop people internally, right? So that's really key. But if they're interviewing you, then there must be some kinds of concerns about what this person is missing. So if I was in the interview and I was in your position, when it was my turn to ask questions, I would say, you know, you were kind enough to share with me that you have somebody that you've been grooming for this role. Could you share with me how I'm different than this person besides the obvious that I haven't worked at the company? And can you tell me, is there anything about my experience that you really appreciate for this role in particular? Notice I'm not saying that that person doesn't have, because that's clearly what you're asking, but you're asking it in a polite way. You know, what about my experience do you think makes me qualified for this role? Why do you think I would potentially do a good job in this role? And then aside from the obvious of not having already worked here and being groomed by you, do you have any other concerns about my ability to do the job, right? So you're really just trying to understand your fit in the organization. And then I don't think there's anything wrong in asking, you know, what in your mind is it going to take for an outside candidate to be chosen over an inside candidate? What would have to be in place for an outside candidate to be the right person for the role? So these are the types of questions that you can ask to get the person thinking about that. But I'll be honest, if I were you, you can ask those questions, most definitely. But if I were you, I'd play the long game here. This person was really kind and told you the truth. I think I would probably say, it sounds like you've got the right candidate for the job. You've developed somebody internally. That's exactly why I want to work at this company. Just hearing you say that you've heavily groomed somebody for this job and that you really see them as a fit for this job, I have so much respect for that. That's exactly the kind of company I want to work for. So, I'm not going to pretend to say that I'm better because you've developed this person, but I definitely want to work for you all. And if for some reason, I bring something to the table that she or he doesn't, then I would love to be considered. But also, perhaps this person moving to that role creates a backfill in need. Is there an opportunity for me to come in and work in the organization and also get that same opportunity to work my way up? Because I'd be willing to explore that as well. See, I would be looking at it much bigger picture. Since they already told you that they have somebody that's groomed, I wouldn't try to fight against it. I would ask questions about it. I wouldn't tell them why I think I'm better or I'm different. I'd ask questions about what they think makes me different than the candidate and what I possibly bring to the table that could be better. But I'd be asking the bigger picture of, how do I get in? The fact that you're grooming someone for this kind of role, it's exactly what I want to be a part of. Can we talk more about that? And I think they just love that refreshing approach. So certainly I know I would if somebody came to me with that. Cheryl has a comment. She says, I'm a huge fan of informational interviews. Good, Cheryl. I've done quite a few while undergoing a career change. They helped me to decide against a career change to HR and focus more on project management. I love it. Isn't that an insightful comment? So see, the other upside to informational interviews is it might help you dodge a bullet. Most definitely. I agree. Michael says, I apologize if you already mentioned this, but with whom at an organization do you recommend an informational interview with? So I didn't specifically recommend, Michael, and it's totally fine. I focus more on people who are aligned with you in one of three ways. They're in the same industry as you, they have the same skills, or they're in the same type of career path, or they're in the same geographic location. These are all strategic people you want to network with. So it can be anyone. It doesn't have to be somebody at a higher level than you. If this is a company on your bucket list, you might want to talk to somebody in accounting, even though you work in HR. Or you might want to talk to somebody in sales, even though you work in accounting. That part doesn't matter. What matters is getting to understand why they became the best at what they do, what they think about the organization, what they think it takes to earn a position there someday. And meeting various people in other departments, think about that. When the position finally comes available and you apply and they realize you know somebody in accounting, you know somebody in marketing, you know somebody in sales because you've done informational interviews, well, you've developed 3 relationships now that are very, impactful and important and will help you, gain trust and respect and get up to speed in the company. So really, it doesn't matter. It's whoever you can get that informational interview with, in my opinion, within the company. And again, within those guidelines, if that made sense. Ellie says, what's the smartest way to answer the question, where do you see yourself in 5 years when you don't believe in a long-term plan, especially after this pandemic? I think it's by being honest, Ellie. I think you would say, here's the thing, always start, but anytime you're going to go negative with an answer, always start with a positive. So if somebody says, where you see yourself in 5 years, don't go in with, I don't, because that's basically saying that's a dumb question. Instead, you want to say, that's a great question. Because to be honest, I've thought about this a lot, and I don't think I can tell anyone, given the pandemic, where I'll be in 5 years. So I feel like any answer I gave you would be inauthentic. But I have thought about where I see myself in a year, or where I see myself in 2 years. And that is something I feel I can confidently share with you. See how you say that? See how you say to them, great question, because I need to come clean with you and say, I don't think I can predict 5 years and I want to be honest with you. So here's my 2-year plan. That's how you want to do that. Gabriel says, any recommendations for creating 2-minute videos for job applications, like introducing yourself and why you're perfect for the role? So I love video intros when you can do them well. If you cannot do a video intro well, don't do it. And by that, I mean, you need to be able to look into the camera. You need to have the angle right. You need to have the lighting right. It needs to look right. You need to be able to talk without any ums or ahs or getting off topic. It needs to sound real and not canned, like you're reading off a script. It has to sound authentic. So I guess the point I'm making is it's really not ideal for a lot of people. Very few people can do it well, in my opinion. I think people should get comfortable doing it, but it's not a skill a lot of people have. So be careful when you're doing them. When you are doing them, what you don't want to ever talk about is why you're perfect for the job. Not ever, 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 because there's no such thing. And it's a real turnoff. And so many people do it and they don't realize how salesy and narcissistic it looks. What you do want to do is spend 2 minutes talking about them. I'm so excited to be reaching out to you. I'm a fan of the company. And when I saw the XYZ position, I couldn't wait to apply. I want to tell you the story about why I have huge respect for your company's products or why I am such a fan of your services. What you have to do is talk about your personal connection. What is going to be the internal motivation for you to get up and go to work there every day? And it better be because you have some kind of passion for what they do or what the work is or what they sell. You know, maybe it's a pharmaceutical company and their medicine saved your grandma. It's some sort of food product and you've been eating it since you were 6 years old. You have got to go back and find your personal connection and spend 2 minutes telling the story. Storytelling is what gets and holds people's attention. And storytelling around why a company is fantastic and how you came to know it was fantastic is exactly what you need to do. It's also the video version of the disruptive cover letter. So if you want some tips on how to do the video version, you can go and download. We have a disruptive cover letter PDF that you can go grab at Work It Daily, where we teach you about the idea of telling stories. And all you would do is turn that into an audio version or a video version instead. But do not talk about yourself. Never talk about you being perfect for the job. The video is not about you. It's about them. Let's see. Will this format work for a mature career changer? So I'm assuming Natalie is asking about informational interviewing, and the answer is heck yes. Even better for mature workers. They should absolutely be out there talking to peers in their industry and finding out, what do you think it's going to take to move over? Most definitely, especially because we have a lot of experience discrimination. You might call it age discrimination. I call it experience discrimination because as you get older, you have more experience and that's what they're really discriminating against. So you want to talk to peers who have the same levels of experience that you do in a different industry or a different career path and talk to them about transferable skills and what they think it's going to take to get recognized. They can really help you with that and also support you when the time comes to make that career change and, vouch for you, which is important. Laura says, when promoted is listed next to a job posting, does it indicate hiring from within? No. So it just simply means that they've promoted it on multiple platforms. Promoted means that it's been sponsored or promoted on multiple platforms, which means they're probably getting a lot of applicants. So that's just something they want you to know, that it's on different places, not just one place, for sure. Why Yan asks, how should I answer interview questions? Tell me something you failed at and what's your worst job interview? Well, I mean, you need to think back. We always teach people at Work It Daily to follow something called experience, learn, and grow. It's a 3-step equation that you use anytime you answer a question, especially a difficult question like this. So when you talk about a time you failed, you want to be honest, you want to talk about a time where you didn't meet expectations or you missed something. You want to talk about what you learned, meaning what did you miss in that time? Because you obviously didn't intend to fail. I think that's the one thing people get worried about. You want to go in and say, look, I didn't intend to fail, but this is what happened. Don't make excuses. Don't blame other people. Be fully accountable. Say, here's the situation. Here's what happened. Here's the blind spots. Here's the thing I didn't know or I didn't see. Here's what turned out. Here's what I learned. And here's how I'd make sure it would never happen again. Because that's what they're really asking. When they ask you when you failed, what they want to hear is, what did you learn from it to make sure it doesn't happen again? And that's where most people bomb in these questions, because they don't answer that. They just say, this is what I messed up on. Well, I want to know what you learned and how you grew. Same thing for your worst job interview. Tell me what you did wrong in the job interview and tell me how you're making sure that it never happens again, which requires you to think, which is why we make all of our members write the answers out to the Experience, Learn, and Grow model so that we can read through and make sure that they are checking all the bases in those questions. Okay. Julie says, how can you get around the external recruiter? External recruiters can and do eliminate potential candidates. They do. So for those of you who don't know what an external recruiter is, this is a company that's been paid to go and find candidates, and they get a commission when they place a candidate. So the problem with that is that they can really mess with your salary. So let's say that a company is looking for, some kind of project manager, and they get down to 2 candidates. One candidate is coming from an external recruiter who's going to want a 30% commission on their first year salary. The other is a direct candidate who didn't. So what that means is the company can actually pay the internal candidate more and still save money. Because if they were, let's say the external candidate wants $100,000 a year, well, the company's going to have to pay $130,000 because that $30,000 is going to the recruiter, the external recruiter. So they might go, well, gee, I'm going to give it to the internal candidate and pay them $110,000, and then they're really going to love the job and we save $20,000. So external recruiters are tough. My advice is don't work with them. The moment you sign on with one and they're pitching you, you can never work with that employer without them getting a cut. So you have to be very careful about external recruiters. If you know you can't get your foot in the door at a company, no matter how hard you try, then you could use an external recruiter for that company. But otherwise, I'm not a big fan of them, because you can, for this very reason, go around them. And the way to go around them is to find the actual recruiters of the company on the website and try to connect with them directly. Zachary says, what is the average time it takes to get hired? I've been applying via LinkedIn and hardly get responses. So a couple of things. Before the crisis hit, the average job search in America was about 6 to 9 months. And that's because most people don't know how to job search. So it takes them 3 times as long as it does them when they learn how to properly job search. That is why people come to work at Daily. They come inside and they find out for the last 6 months, they haven't really been looking for work. And I'll tell you right now, Zachary, if you are just applying online and waiting to be contacted, about 3% chance, literally, truly 3% chance you'll ever get contacted, because there's so much competition online and so many people are applying that you're probably not even being seen by the human eye. This is why you have to learn proactive job search and how to go around the applicant tracking process, which is what we teach at Work It Daily. We've seen people cut their job search time up to half. And it's because you need to know where to look, and you need to know how to connect, and you need to know how to build a relationship in order to get the interviews. And that's what most people don't know how to do. It's target marketing. It's business 101. And we're not taught how to do it in school. So my advice is you definitely want to get some job search coaching, whether you work with us or someplace else. But if you're just applying online, it will literally take you months and months, because it's essentially not looking for work at all. Natasha says, I understand what you said about not to ever speak on why you are great for a job. However, I've been asked to submit an answer to this question on many video request interview entries. Why would the company request this if you should never answer this question? Well, I'm not saying you shouldn't answer that question, Natasha. I'm saying that if you're doing a video interview pitch, that shouldn't be the focus. In a 2-minute video introducing yourself, it shouldn't be why you're perfect for the job. If you were specifically asked why we should hire you for this job, then yes, and we walk people through that all the time. And the secret there is really showing humility. Post this crisis, there will be millions of people who are qualified for jobs. So none of us can say that we're special, right? We cannot say that we're special. What you do need to do is recognize that there are plenty of candidates, and you want to lead in that answer with humility. Always lead a question like that with humility. So that's a great question. Here's what I know. In a time like today, you have got, I'm sure, dozens and dozens of equally qualified people, and it must be a really difficult decision on who to give the job to. That being said, all I can do is share with you what I believe are my top 5 qualities that, when put together, make me unique for the role in a way that I think will create a lot of value for you, in a way that I believe I'll be able to, provide a return on the investment that will save or make you more than enough money to justify the cost of hiring me. And these are the attributes that I think that I bring that will provide the most value to your organization. So that's how you transition. You're not special, you're not better, but you are different. And here's how you believe you are different, and that will help you deliver a great amount of value. So it takes finessing, and it takes writing it out and reading it back to yourself and really getting comfortable with it, which is something we do every day with people inside Work It Daily, because rehearsing is so vital. If I can leave everybody with one thing, that if you're answering a question like that, getting the tone right, getting the wording right, saying it right, very, very important. And you really only get one chance to do that, which is why you must practice for interviews, folks. You must write out answers to interviews, must read them back to yourself. You must practice, or you will get into that interview. They will ask you a curveball question. You will stammer, you will you will ah, or you'll say something that's too cocky, too confident, or too weak. You've got to really work on your interview prep. There's plenty of resources out there. No excuses. Okay. And speaking of no excuses, wrapping it up for today, one more time, our free resource on the 18 questions you must know how to ask are on our website. Go click the link, get the 18 questions, start writing them out, start working on them so you can be prepared for your next interview. And if you want to join us for our live training in May, which is how to get hired after being let go, lots of people out there in that situation, come get some accountability. Come be part of a job search group. Come meet some amazing people. Get that momentum you need every day. It can be hard. It can be lonely to be looking for work all by yourself, but you don't have to be. You can come be part of a private group, work with others. It's fun. It's energetic. You get your daily momentum, just like the name of our company, Work It Daily. And you do this thing that you don't really want to do. You can actually make it fun. I know that's hard to believe, but it can be done when you join the right program. So go over and check us out. I hope you do. All right, everyone. Thank you again. So excited to be here with you. Don't forget, I will be back with you on Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Just want to say again, thank you for the opportunity to be live with you all each and every week. I love that we're able to give out all this information, but it's only as good as the people that come and ask these amazing questions. So thank you. Keep them coming. Keep these awesome questions filling the feed so that we can help others. Because if you have the question, I guarantee you somebody else listening to this does too. And that's how you're really helping everyone together, okay? All right, everyone. Thanks so much. And until next time, remember what we always say, if you want to win, you got to work it daily.